Somewhere, nestled in the mountains of Arizona, lies the little town of Sanchez. Embraced by the Gila River, the beauty and solitude of this land speaks of years past when America was being born. It was here where the fierce Geronimo used to roam, spreading fear and terror in the hearts of many. Yet it was in this very place 100 years ago, God chose his servant, Pastor Marcel Serna, to spread a message of peace and love to all that would listen.
Well, it seems to be the thing these days to learn something more about our roots. It's good for us to go back in our history and learn how God has led and what events shaped our lives. We're here this weekend to learn something about the roots of the Hispanic work in North America. And I just want to thank Elder Vasquez, who is with me here, for helping to focus on this very important event in the history of the church in North America. An event that helps us understand and appreciate the fact that we are a mixture of cultures, and that we owe a lot to the Hispanic members of the church. And it's wonderful how God has provided for the growth of His church by people from North America going to countries, Latin American countries, and then some of them come to this country and learn of the Lord. So it's a great time of celebration. It's a time when we can think of how God has led, and it's great to be a part of it.
There's actually 3 dates that we are celebrating at the centennial. The first date would be the first Hispanic NAD baptism that took place on December 9, which was a Sabbath, in the Gila River, just a little ways from here. And it was Elder Kilgore, who was in charge of the 5th District of the General Conference, who officiated in that baptism.
What year was this?
That was 1899. And most of the people that were baptized that Sabbath afternoon were members of the Sanchez family. It was 15 members, actually 14, because Elder Marcel Serna, who became a convert from the Methodist Church, became a Seventh-day Adventist. He was perhaps the first baptized that day.
In my understanding that Elder Serna also became a pastor, is that?
Yes, he was the Hispanic Methodist in Tucson. He was from Tucson, and he was in charge of the Methodist work in several states in the Southwest. He was a pastor, and he received a visit by some literature evangelists and became intrigued with the Sabbath and discovered it was a truth, and he was convinced. And at the same time, 2 of the Sanchez sons stumbled on the Sabbath and they were wondering why they were keeping Sunday instead of Saturday, because in the Spanish Bible it says very clearly sábado, which is Saturday, and they never read Sunday anyplace, and all of a sudden they're wondering why they're keeping Sunday when it says Saturday in Spanish in the Bible. So they wrote to the pastor, their pastor, which was Marcel Serna in Tucson, and at the same time, you know, the pastor's having this experience, and so he invites Brother Black and Williams, who were the 2 men who brought him the message with literature. You know, they were selling Adventist books. They were doing the literature work, and they came upon his door because they came to his home, and they were very happy to do that because they discovered that in Tucson at that time, 1899, there were a lot of Mexican people that didn't know how to speak English, and they were in old Tucson. And so when they came to his house, they were very pleased because he was bilingual. And so they tried to sell him the books. He said he wasn't interested. So they came back and they said, would you teach us some Spanish? They said, because we can't speak Spanish and there's so many people around here who can't speak English, we'd like to learn Spanish so we can do our work here. He said he'd be glad to. And so they started studying English. And he started teaching them how to roll their R's and things like that. And And Williams said to him, why don't we have a textbook or something? And they had it in their mind to use the Bible and to get into the Bible with him. So he said, fine. And so he put the English and the Spanish Bible side by side. And as you would know, they started from Genesis. And they read through the first chapter, Spanish and English. And they're reading in Spanish, and he's helping them. And that all went fine. The next day they got together, and they started with the second chapter. They just had, they couldn't get beyond the third verse, second and third verse that talk about the Sabbath. And Marcial was so convinced that Sunday was the right day, he challenged them to a debate, public debate. Public debates were very popular at that time. And so they both prepare. Williams and Black team prepare, the Adventist team with Serna. I mean, he prepares, they prepare, and they announce it one Sunday. They get a lot of people out there, and Brother Black, the younger man, prepares his presentation, and he does it very well. He does a real good job on his presentation. And then it was time for Serna. Serna all this time is taking down notes because he's going to debate all this, rebuttal all this. And instead, the Holy Spirit touches him. He's convinced that what they're saying, what Brother Black is saying, is correct. And when he gets up, he surprises everybody by saying, what this young man just finished giving us is the truth. And I want to tell you that I've accepted the Sabbath, and that I'm going to start keeping my next Sabbath next week. And it startled his members, but shortly after that, most of his members, at least 19 of them, were also accepted by profession of faith and joining the Adventist Church.
Two of the surviving daughters of Adiel Sanchez, the pioneer, shared some fascinating insight in the early years of God's work.
My father and my uncle Abel used to take products to a mining town.
Morenci, Arizona. It's about 50 miles from here, from Safford.
They used to take hay and cheese, their products they used to have from their farm. And at that time they were Methodist. Mm-hmm. So when they were to come back, they were very good Methodists, because when they were coming back, Sunday got in between. So they decided to stop and rest Sunday. And they started reading the Bible, and they found in the Ten Commandments that Sunday was not the day to worship, but Saturday. When they came back, they wrote to their pastors, Pastor Serna, mm-hmm. and asked him why was the Bible stating that the Seventh-day Adventist was the day of rest, and they were worshiping on Sunday. Pastor Serna wrote to them that he would come and explain everything.
We knew Elder Serna. We were there on Saturday when he preached. Yes, and well, it was just not very many of us, ¿verdad? My mother washed most every day. And then the ministers that used to go in gathering or whatever they went over, my mother fed them and took care of them until they went back. My daddy would go in gathering with the ministers. So my mother worked very, very hard.
The historic celebration of the 100 years of the birth of the Seventh-day Adventist Spanish Church in Sanchez, Arizona, was shared by the hundreds who attended. The Sabbath morning services were an unforgettable experience filled with music, testimonies, and moving stories of the past.
In 1913, Abel Sanchez one of the Sanchez sons that was mentioned here earlier, was working at the academy in Angwin, California, to help defray the tuition costs for his son, Ismael, who was attending the academy. And since he was there in Angwin and he knew Ellen White lived there, one day he decided to pay Ellen White a visit. And so he went out to Ellen White's country home there, the two-story home that many of you have been there to visit. And when he came to the door, knocked, Ellen White went to the door and graciously invited him in, had him sit in the parlor, and they visited for a little bit. And Ellen White noticed immediately that he had a Spanish accent and asked him immediately where he attended church. And so he said, I attend church, I'm a member of the Sanchez, Arizona Spanish church, and I'm just here for a short time earning some extra money so that I can help pay the tuition of my son here who's attending here. And she says, oh, that is very interesting to me. And then she proceeded to give him a statement that constitutes for us the only inspired statement that Ellen White ever made to an Hispanic. Unfortunately, it was never written down, but it has been remembered and has been carried from word of mouth through the generations. And so Ellen White looked at this young Hispanic who was in his 40s at the time and said to him, it has been shown me, she said, that the Spanish work will be placed at the vanguard and march at the head of the cause of God in the United States. And I just hope that the pace, the momentum that the Hispanics are carrying now will continue until Jesus comes. And Don Lorenzo Sanchez came in there with his rifle. He pulled a chair and sat right in front of that whole group of people that were there to study the Bible. He sat there and put the rifle on his lap. And by this time, everybody was paying attention. And he said to them, listen, I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense. I want you, he said to his sons, I have taught you to be good Baptists, now you're Methodists. I've taught you to keep Sunday holy. And he said especially to the two boys, Adiel and Abel, stop studying this crazy thing about Saturday and do as I taught you. Or else, he picked up his rifle, he said, or else I'm going to kill all of you. Those are very stern, hard.
And at that time, it was the custom of the children got married and they were living with the parents. When they accepted our religion, my grandfather took them out of their home. And they had to live under a mesquite tree.
My mom.
My mom, in the winter, with two children. And they were, but they kept their faith and were going to be baptized. And as I said, when they were getting ready to be baptized, my grandfather went home and got the gun to kill them, starting with a pastor and my dad, my uncle, and everybody that was going to be baptized. When he went to get the gun, he had, I imagine, a stroke.
But my grandma ran to the church and told my uncle and my dad that my grandfather was going to kill him. Remember? My grandmother, Juanita Vaca Sanchez, went and told Dad and that my grandpa was coming to kill them. So they went out. By that time, my grandpa had a stroke.
And then she came back and told him that he was dying. They went to see him, even when he had threatened to kill them. They went back and started to talk to them. And he recognized they had the right religion and admitted, told them, go ahead with your religion. God is telling me something. So your religion is a right one.
He said, you've always been a faithful son. You've always obeyed me. But now, he said, you've chosen to disobey me and follow your Heavenly Father's dictates. He said, be faithful. Always be faithful. He called the rest of his family. Abel was next. And he said to Abel the same thing. Be faithful. So he died a content man, that at least his children would take one more step in faith to do what they thought was the correct thing. This father had been very hard on these children. When they decided to get baptized, he put them out of the house. They were married, they had wives, children. They had to sleep for several months under the cottonwood trees because their father put them out. But just before he died, he blessed them.
But this historic event brought also gladness and good memories of the past. Adiel Sanchez's son remembered his time at the little old school.
Mi mamá que dice, y alguien se sabe el versículo de memoria, dice, sí, yo sé, uno de los niños dice, Carranza, Carranza, te pica la panza.
I have followed through the years, the growth of our Spanish work in America. And it's just impressed me. For instance, as I came to Washington in 1970, there was only a couple of churches. Now there's over 30 churches just in the Washington area. So it is indeed a joy to see our Latin program growing in North America and reaching the thousands of people, that need to know the message. And so I consider it a great privilege to be part of this, because I have spoken to many Spanish churches. I've seen the growth and the enthusiasm. And especially, I think I know the reason why. The dedication of our Spanish people in witnessing for Christ.
In all throughout North America, God is calling men and women to turn on the light. And that's what happened here 100 years ago. But it's going to happen now throughout the whole world. People are going to be turning on the light, and the people of the world will see the light of the beauty and the power of Jesus Christ.
When my brothers became Adventists, they all would go to a different town, reserved for church, and I would stay back. I would stay home, saying that somebody had to stay at the ranch. it was best not just for the ranch to be alone. And it was because I was breaking a horse by the name of Prince. And I wanted to make him the best horse because he could run. And one Sabbath morning after they left, I put on my Levi's and my boots, and I went to train my horse. And I don't know from where, but a metal ring, what they used to use in the wooden barrels, was on the racetrack. What that ring was doing there, I don't know. But my horse put both front feet inside the ring and tumbled over, and he fainted on top of me. And I was converted under a horse that had passed out.
The Lord has blessed the Hispanic work in such a way that we have over 100,000 members here in the United States. So this for us is just like a birthday. It's something very special that perhaps not too many countries in the world will have this celebration.
Well, actually, the Spanish work has come from virtually out of nowhere in the last couple of decades because it's just mushroomed here in North America. And it's really been the cutting edge of the church in North America in recent years because, frankly, the Anglo work has not been growing so rapidly. But the Hispanic work has brought a vitality to the church in North America that is invigorating not only to the Hispanic membership, but throughout the church. It's really helped to keep us moving.
One night my father was called to go out to Sanchez to deliver a baby. In that time, there were very few bridges across the Gila. And my dad rode across the Gila on a horse with his medical bag up on the pommel of his saddle and his legs drawn up. And when he got to Sanchez, for the first time, he'd never known the family before. While they were awaiting the arrival of the baby, he noticed some magazines on a table. And pretending all innocence, he said, "What are those magazines?" And Mrs. Sanchez, or no, I guess it would have been Mr. Sanchez, explained to him, well, those are magazines from our church, and explained all about it. I don't know whether it was El Centinela or the Signs of the Times or what it was, but my father was very happy to say that our family also was Adventist. At that time, my mother was practicing the Adventist faith by herself. My father was not a practicing Adventist, and my mother had felt that she was coming out to the edge of nowhere to be the only Adventist in town, and she was so happy to find another family. She's told me, although I don't remember, that she would take us to worship with them, and I know she said that the car got stuck in the Gila a few times and got pulled out by a horse and wagon.
My aunt Abner was married to Agustin Sanchez. He was a son of Adiel Sanchez, who was the pioneer of the church here. The son also of the, there were a lot of brothers, and they built their own church at Sanchez, Arizona. And it was a beautiful place. I remember visiting them when they were all alive yet. Yeah, and I was just a kid. I remember when I was baptized in 1936, the church where I was baptized had 18 members. I made the 19th member of the church. And today the same church has produced 3 more churches. And our church now today has over 300 members. But there has been another 3 churches, like I say, established out of it. So I have seen the work grow.
It was here that a little church and then a little school was established to serve the small Spanish Adventist congregation.
They had a wooden stove. They had a wooden stove, and my daddy or my uncle would get up on a Saturday early in the morning and come and light, and put some wood so it'd be warm when the rest of us went to church.
We had benches.
Benches. There are in Superior. The church gave them to a church in Superior. The benches are still there.
The final resting place of God's servants will remain a memorial of their faithful service and to do unto others as you would want others do unto you.
In celebration of the Hispanic Seventh-day Adventist Centennial Anniversary Year, 1899, 1999. This marker is presented by the more than 100,000 Hispanic Seventh-day Adventists of the North American Division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
When Geronimo was on the run from the government years ago in the 1800s, Lorenzo Sanchez he became friends with Geronimo by trading cattle and some of the gardens, food that they had, corn, and some of the clothing, and they became friends. And while he was on the run from the government, Geronimo, his tribe would be up in these hills up here, and they would just go ahead and stay up there while he was on the run from the government. This recently was put here probably about 5-7 years ago, the headstone marker, but this is actually the type of headstone that they used before, and the initials LS was the marker, Lorenzo Sanchez, right here. And this stone was the marker for the grave for many, many, many years until the military, because of the Civil War, he was a Civil War veteran, they put this marker here. But they kept the stone on top of his grave.
Let us bow our heads for prayer.
It's important to realize that the Lord doesn't usually operate in the way we would. We'd probably go to a big city, some populous place to start a work, but He chose people out in the middle of nowhere, really, and humble people, and chose to give them special insights and dedication, and from there it began to grow. And that's kind of been His plan through the years, to do things in a different way than we do them. So I think it's good for people to come and see the remoteness, see the lack of a community and of a settled area, and realize this is where the Lord chose to start the Hispanic work.
It was right here where the very first Seventh-day Adventist church of Hispanic people started for the entire North American division. And from here, as you know, it has grown into a huge church of more than 100,000 members. So we're proud that it all started right here in Arizona, and thank God.
And how is it in your conference? Do we have a firm presence of Spanish Seventh-day Adventists, and what do you see the future holding?
Well, I'm happy to tell you that here in Arizona, our church is alive, it's well, it's growing. In fact, the last 3 years have been record-setting years in soul winning, and our Hispanic pastors are leading the way. They, in fact, are baptizing about 46% of the total baptisms, and they have grown from a few years ago, about 5% of our membership, and today they make up 24% of the membership here in Arizona. So God is really blessing.
What do you see in the future for the Spanish church in your conference, and do you see any perhaps contagious spirit spilling over to the Anglo?
There's no question about it. The spirit is contagious. In fact, the future we see is really bright. We anticipate the Hispanic work continuing to grow at a tremendous rate, but it's also true that our Anglo ministry has become much more exciting, and the growth in the Anglo community has increased greatly as well. And so it's true, we're all catching the evangelism spirit from our Hispanics.
Thank you very much, Elder, and God bless you as you continue to lead here.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege to have you folks with us, and what a thrilling day we've had together. It'll be a more thrilling day in the future when the Lord comes and we see these graves open, and these folk who helped start the Hispanic Seventh-day Adventist ministry will be caught up to meet the Lord with us, and we'll have eternity to rejoice.
But in good Spanish style, the 100 years was above all a celebration, and a celebration it was.
Merecedor de alabanza es aquel que vino a salvarme merecedor de alabanzas, pues siendo yo un pecador, no escatimó su linaje para morir en la cruz, merecedor de alabanzas por los siglos, sea Jesús. Mi Cristo, hoy te alabo, mi corazón te agradece, pagaste por mis pecados, aun siendo inocente, un sacrificio tan grande no debe pasar por alto. 3 veces te digo santo, aunque crean que estoy loco. Santo, santo, santo.
Well, actually, I'm impressed, wonderfully impressed that in relatively a short time so much has been accomplished. As I look over the years that I served, it's amazing how the time has flown by. But more amazing still is the good fruits that have been produced as a consequence of the good work, the missionary work, not just by the workers of the church, but by the wonderful laity.
The fiesta was also an opportunity to recognize Hispanic leaders for their contribution to God's work.
From the unions, we have prepared this humble plaque for you. Beautiful. And we want you to accept it as a token of appreciation for what you have done as a leader, as a friend, as a counselor. In fact, you have been a great leader for us. Manny, this is a gift for your union leaders.
The Tucson Central Hispanic Church is recognized and congratulated on its 100th anniversary.
Again, congratulations to the Sanchez family, to the Arizona Conference, and it's really been a pleasure to be with you here. And Lord's blessings to you, and enjoy your food tonight.
Van Talley, the mayor of Safford, Arizona.
Thank you. What a pleasure it is for me to be here to represent the citizens of Safford as well as the citizens of the Gila Valley, to welcome you to our fine community and praise you for putting together such a fine event.
I also was blessed by the reality that you have children, you have grandchildren, you have great-grandchildren who are still following what the Sanchez or the other folk, the Sernas, believed, which means then that there was substance to that message. It was not something that they just heard about and it was just a fad. Just a fad. But rather it was something that moved them, that transformed their lives, and that as a result had an effect, an impact on their offsprings.
Oh, I'm just real happy to see this come to a beautiful close, and I just can't, like I said, can't praise the Lord enough for seeing a fulfillment of a long-time dream.
You know, you cannot transmit through the genes. You cannot transmit religion. Religion has got to be bought. It's got to be caught. And I think this is the most important thing. There are many who maintain the vision and the courage of the early pioneers, but many have lost the way. They have, for some one reason or another, they have not continued. But I think a relationship with Christ, with that vision that the pioneers had, is what we need today.
Más allá del sol, más allá del sol, yo tengo un hogar, hogar, bello hogar, más allá del sol, más allá del sol.
You're watching KSBN, the Safe TV channel, Springdale, Arkansas. Safe television for all ages.
By the reality that is that's brought your children and grandchildren 25 years as the director of Sweeper Levels.
I was thinking about this. Perhaps the only thing that we need to do is to show that she was there, and the reason why I like it well is because of the three graces she's got. And so maybe a passage there where she turns to the camera and smiles, and that's like this, like, okay. Yeah.
Te leo otro párrafo aquí. The faithful discharge of today's duties is the best preparation for tomorrow's trials. The faithful discharge of today's